Tagore once wrote in his letter, "Poets are proverbially vain, and I am no exception. However, this vanity, with its many hues, too, is so beautifully interpreted and reflected in his amazingly rich poetry. I am sure there are many here, many poetry lovers. There is a difference in reading poetry, in reciting poetry, and listening to poetry. And ever since I heard Dr. William Radice recite Tagore's poetry, the text itself has taken on a new meaning, a much deeper meaning. His rendering of Tagore's poems in his rich, sonorous voice touch the whole heart and the soul. It makes the poetic content linger longer, even after the spoken word. Dr. Radice, professor at London University, has taken this message all over the world. He is recently back from taking the Tagore message to Croatia, and it is indeed an honor that he's here with us. Please welcome Dr. William Radice.
Can you not join in this rhythm? Can you not join in this rhythm? The jettisoning, drifting away and dissolving joy of it? Can you not join in this rhythm? Can you not join in this rhythm? Can you not open your ears to the music the Veena of death plays? Can you not open your ears to the music the Veena of death plays all over the sky, in the sun, the stars, the moon? Can you not feel the fire that cascades with the joy of its burning? Can you not join in this rhythm? Can you not join in this rhythm? With mind-blowing flurries of song, it hurtles who knows where, it never looks back. The racing, rolling joy of its forward movement can never be checked. With mind-blowing flurries of song, it hurtles who knows where, it never looks back. The racing, rolling joy of its forward movement can never be checked. With the stamping of the feet of that joy, the 6 seasons wildly dance. With the stamping of the feet of that joy, the 6 seasons wildly dance. A flood is unleashed in the world, a symphony of scent and color, because of the joy of letting go, of casting aside, of dying. Can you not join in this rhythm? Can you not join in this rhythm? Well, dear friends, that was from my new translation of Gitanjali, commissioned by Penguin India, and it's just been released in New Delhi. And I'm so grateful to Manjula Kumar and her colleagues at the Smithsonian for this very generous invitation and opportunity to talk about my new book and to read some of the translations to you. The book is not just a new translation of all the poems that are in the English Gitanjali. It's also a new text of Rabindranath's own translation, and I'll be telling you about that tomorrow. Today I want to focus on my own new translations, read some more to you, and tell you a bit about how I have tackled the immense challenge of translating these great poems. Now, as I read that poem to you, one thing you will certainly have noticed is that there were many repeated lines. This is because it is actually a song. Some of you will know the song. Parbi naki jog dite ei chandere. For a long time, I was reluctant to translate the songs of Tagore. And in the introduction to my best-known book, the Penguin Selected Poems of Tagore, which first came out in 1985, I say quite bluntly that I do not think one can translate songs because one needs the music. And I quote Tagore's own comment on this, that a song without its melody is like a butterfly whose wings have been plucked. But gradually, as I came to understand Rabindra Sangeet better, the structure of the songs, the relationship between the words and music, and the very important role that is played by repetition and the recurrence of the refrain, I realized that one way in which one could translate the songs was to preserve those repetitions. And that's what I now do. It's a very simple solution, really. No one has ever thought of doing this before, and it certainly took me a long time to arrive at it. But I find it very satisfying and liberating that it seems to create a new kind of energy. It's exciting to read the poems out aloud with the repetitions. And also, it's immediately clear to the reader or the listener that this is a song text, because repetitions are intrinsic to songs the world over. Let me now give you another example, and this is the very first poem in the standard text of Gitanjali. So when I started doing the translations in 2009, this was the first one that I translated. And of course, many of you will know Rabindranath's own translation, because it's the first one in Gitanjali. Thou hast made me endless, such is thy pleasure. This frail vessel thou emptiest again and again, and fillest it ever with fresh life. In my translation, it comes out like this. You have made me limitless. It amuses you so to do. You exhaust me, then fill me up again with new life. You've made me limitless. It amuses you so to do. You've roamed so many mountains and riverbanks with this little flute. You've roamed so many mountains and riverbanks with this little flute. You've played so many flourishes round and round again. Whom should I tell how many? You've made me limitless. It amuses you so to do. At that nectar touch of yours, my heart has lost its edges, and with that vast ecstasy, words gush out. At that nectar touch of yours, my heart has lost its edges, and with that vast ecstasy, words gush out. You fill my single-cupped hand with gifts day and night. You fill my single-cupped hand with gifts day and night, never used up, however many ages run, always more for me to take. You've made me limitless. It amuses you so to do. You exhaust me, then fill me up again with new life. You've made me limitless. It amuses you so to do. Now have a look at how it looks on the page. Sorry. You'll see that I don't use much punctuation. I let the line endings do the work of punctuation. You'll see that there are line spaces to indicate the four main sections of a Tagore song. The vast majority of Tagore songs have four sections. You have the stai, which is the chorus or refrain at the beginning, and then you have the antara, which usually rises higher up the scale, and the refrain comes in at the end of the antara. Then you have the shonchari, where the melody usually goes down into a lower scale, and you don't have the refrain at the end of the shonchari. And then you have the abhug, which always repeats the melody of the antara. It's the emotional climax of the song, and it's a very special, expressive moment in a Tagore song, when the melody of the antara comes back in the fourth part, the abhug, but with different words. So I use italics to bring out that connection between the antara and the abhug. Now, in my new translation, I've tried to bring out the formal and stylistic variety that you have in the poems of Gitanjali. This was not possible for Rabindranath to do himself. He wasn't an English poet. He didn't have English poetic devices such as meter and rhyme and so on at his disposal. Of course, he was an absolute master of those in Bengali, but not in English. So he wisely chose to translate his poems and songs into poetic prose. But I am an English poet, and I do have these techniques, so I try to make full use of them. I would say there are basically 4 types of poem in Gitanjali. You have the songs. There are, in fact, 41 songs out of the 103 poems in the standard text of Gitanjali. Then you have poems which are not actually songs, but are song-like in character. They could be songs, but there are no melodies for them. Then you have sonnets, and then you have ballad-like poems in strophic forms. So I want now to give you an example of a poem which is song-like in character, but is not actually a song. Now, when I translate the songs, you've seen how I make use of repetitions, and that brings out the structure of the song very clearly. I don't use meter and rhyme when I'm translating the songs, because I feel that once the words are sung, one is no longer particularly aware of the meter and rhyme, even though Tagore, who could write in meter and rhyme so effortlessly, uses meter and rhyme in the song texts. But when I am translating poems that are not songs, I feel it is important to reflect the form of the poem and find some way of capturing its meter and its rhyme scheme. Of course, one can never copy this exactly. It would be a mistake to copy it. One has to find some kind of equivalent form. So as an example of this, let me take poem number 96 in the standard text, which in the manuscript order, which actually I followed in my new book, I'll tell you more about that tomorrow, is number 7, and is actually in the manuscript the first poem that is actually a poem and not a song. And this is also a very well-known poem in Gitanjali, and many of you will know the English text. When I leave from hence, let this be my parting word, that what I have seen is unsurpassable. And there's a very moving connection here between Gitanjali and English literary history, because the great First World War poet, Wilfred Owen, took a copy of that poem in a notebook to the Battle of the Somme, where he died. It was found later by his mother. Now, yes? Yeah, I can't do that straight away on the screen, but I am just about to read out the Bengali version, because I want you to hear what the Bengali sounds like. Bengalis here will know it, but even for those who are not Bengali and don't understand Bengali, I think you will hear at once that the poem has a real shape to it. So let me read it out in Bengali, and then I'll read you my translation. যাবার দিনে এই কথাটি বলে যেন যায়, যা দেখেছি যা পেয়েছি তুলনা তার নাই, এই জ্যোতি সমুদ্র মাঝে যে শতদল পদ্মরাজে তারই মধু পান করেছি ধন্য আমি তাই, যাবার দিনে এই কথাটি জানিয়ে যেন যায়। বিশ্বরূপের খেলা ঘরে কতই গেলেম খেলে, অপরূপকে দেখে গেলেম দুটি নয়ন মেলে, পরশ যারে যাই না করা সকল দেহে দিলেন ধরা, এইখানে শেষ করেন যদি শেষ করে দিন ধাই, যাবার বেলা এই কথাটি জানিয়ে যেন যায়। Well, even those of you who don't understand Bengali can hear at once that this is a beautifully constructed poem. It has such an elegant shape to it, such economy of language, so much is expressed. And you can hear the rhythm, and you can hear the recurrent rhymes, particularly this I sound, jai, nai, tai, comes back at the end, jai. And it seemed to me that with a poem like this, it's essential to find some way of expressing those formal qualities in creative English translation. So this is what my translation sounds like, and I'll read it and then I'll show it to you on the screen so you can see what it looks like as well. Let me pronounce these words the day I go. Nothing compares with what I've seen, with what I've come to know. The 100-petaled lotus that upon this sea of light blooms, I've drunk its nectar. Let me to everyone speak of this good fortune on the day I go. This world of forms in which I've played allows what has no form to show its beauty. With my eyes, I've witnessed this. That which can't be touched has touched and hugged the whole of my body. Thus, if all of this must end, then let it go. These are the words which on the day I leave, I want you all to know. I want to just show it to you on the screen so you can see what it looks like on the page. Here it is. Now, because of the way my lines run on, sometimes the rhymes that I've used are slightly disguised, but that makes them more subtle. And I've used some half rhyme in the second verse there, upon, rhyming with everyone. And then in the penultimate verse, this half rhyming with thus. The show at the end of the verse before, because of the run-on, allows what has no form to show its beauty. You might not notice initially that rhyme. But the O sound, which of course is equivalent to the I sound in the Bengali, is there. And it comes in again at the end, and it creates a shape which I think is similar to the Bengali. Now, I mentioned that Gitanjali also includes sonnets, and last night, at the delightful reception at the Indian ambassador's, not the residence, the actual Indian embassy, wasn't it? But it's a beautiful house, and it was so lovely, just like stepping into a private house, really. It was so natural and informal. Anyway, I was given the chance to read two of the sonnets there, and I'd like to read two more. First, though, I'll read Rabindranath's own translation, because this is the only case in Gitanjali where he actually based a translation on two poems, not one. So let me just read his version. This is in the new text that I've done, so that it may be slightly different from the standard version. And again, I'm sure this will be familiar to many of you. I was not aware of the moment when I first crossed the threshold of this life. What was the power that opened me out upon this vast mystery like a bud in the forest at midnight? When in the morning I looked upon the light, I felt in a moment that I was no stranger in this world, that the inscrutable power without name and form had taken me in its arms in the form of my own mother. Even so, in death, the same unknown will appear as ever known to me. And because I love this life, I know I will love death as well. The child cries out when from the right breast the mother takes it away, but finds its consolation in the left one at the very next moment. The two sonnets on which that translation is based are from Tagore's book Naivedya, published in 1901. This is one of the sources for the poems in the English Gitanjali. So let me now read you my translation of these two sonnets. And I've done them in the standard English Shakespearean sonnet form, different, of course, from the Italian Petrarchan form, which is also used by many English poets. But when we think of the sonnet in the English tradition, of course we think of the Shakespearean sonnet with the standard A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G rhyme structure. The moment when I first came through life's gate into our stunning dwelling place on earth, I didn't know a thing. What power, what fate had laid me in this enigma, like the birth at night in some vast forest of a bud? Yet when at dawn I raised my head and saw with open eyes, at once I understood that this our planet, with its treasure store of joys and pains, this place unknowable, unfathomable, is, just like a mother's breast, fully familiar after all. The power, formless, huge, that ignorance smothers, takes on a shape I didn't need to fear. A mother's living presence, tender, near. Death is unknown too. These days, at times, I quake and shudder with the fear of it. To have to leave this world, the horror climbs, brings tears to my eyes, and makes me want to pit my strength against it, hold life with both arms. Oh, fool, who was it gave you, long before you wanted anything, the world's sweet charms? When death dawns, the unknowable will once more be known. You'll recognize his face. Surely, if I have loved this life so very much, I'll love death too, when I can see him clearly. A child, for fear of losing the warm touch of his mother's breast, begins to wail, but then, moved to her other breast, he's calm again. It's a great privilege to translate such great poetry. This is really, really great poetry. And of course, when one writes sonnets, going back to Shakespeare himself, also I think one has in mind the great soliloquies in the great plays of Shakespeare, that somehow these extraordinary sonnets in Neubedde, they're like soliloquies, and they seem to me to connect with the great soliloquies of Hamlet, particularly these reflections on death. The last type of poem that we have in Gitanjali are these ballad-like poems, many of them from the book Kea, published in 1906. So I'd like to end with one of those. I think, yes? Yes, the first line in Bengali of this one, it's called Lila. It has a title in Kea, and the first line is Ami Shorut Shesher Meger Mote. Okay. And I think I chose this one because when I read the two sonnets to myself, the ones that I just read to you, and I was thinking about, yes, this great privilege that one feels in translating such great poetry. And of course, there's a power there. The power of poetry is extraordinary, and it can do so much. It can embrace the whole world, the whole of human experience, the whole universe. At the same time, poetry is a very fragile thing. It's very modest in its means. It's just words on the page. And particularly in the context of the present age, one feels that sometimes it can hardly compete against other forms of power. Here we are in the great capital city of the United States of America with all these symbols of state power and all these great memorials around us and so on. So you have all that, and then you have all the electronic media that bombard us today, film, television, recorded music and so on, pop concerts, you know, on a huge scale. And you think, what can poor poetry do against all of that? I suppose every poet feels this sometimes. You know, what is it all for? what's going to happen in the end? What's the point of doing all this? Trying to achieve this kind of power when one is up against all these other kinds of power which seem so much greater. Then one thinks a bit more and one realizes, of course, well, nothing lasts in the end. Of course, we're all going to go. I mean, I went into the Museum of Air and Space and saw a wonderful film called Journey to the Stars. And of course, we know that eventually our planet will be swallowed up by an aging and expanding sun. Probably will have disappeared from the planet long before that. Well, this poem, which I'm going to end with, Rabindranath is in a way wrestling with some of these issues. The fact that the kind of power that we try as poets and creative artists to achieve, the things that we do which we hope will last in a way, we also know that they won't last. And yet there is some kind of reward in the sheer act of attempting this. There's a loneliness that comes out in the poem too. All creative artists feel this, that the art that they create does seem to connect up with larger creative energies, and that is the reward, the feeling that somehow what you do reflects or connects with these creative forces which are far, far bigger than us, the creative forces that have shaped the universe and human evolution and so on. That loneliness, though, because of the feeling that actually only you, as the poet, or in my case the translator here, the creative artist, only you can really feel that connection. Other people might not feel it in the same way. Only you can feel it, and that creates a kind of loneliness. But as I say, the sheer fact that there is that connection brings its own reward. And I think Rabindranath, in this beautiful poem, which comes near the end of the sequence, I'll be talking about the importance of the sequence in my view, as in the manuscript as opposed to the standard text that Yeats edited. It comes near the end of the sequence, number 78. There are 83 poems in the original sequence. So I'll just finish with this poem. I'm like a cloud drifting at close of autumn, lost in your sky. You dazzle forever, but still haven't melted my darkness to vapor. You've passed me by. No touch of your sunbeams, no light intermixing. Condemned to be separate, I'm left high and dry. If that is your fancy, if that is your whimsy, then try a new game. Play with this remnant, this trivial fragment, till I and your glitter are one and the same. Let winds blow my colors hither and thither, till, jumped up from nothing, I match your name. Then, when your playing is over and done with, permit me to fall as tears in deep darkness, becoming at morning nothing but pureness, no colors at all, and a bright sea of openness, smiling with coolness, will absorb my whiteness beyond recall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William, for adding and enhancing our enjoyment of Tagore's poetry.
Rama, Rashi, Rashi, Rashi,